I'd like to welcome all members to the meeting, Police and Fire and Rescue Subcommittee, 30th of June. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome back to Eleanor Gaw. Afternoon, Eleanor. She's a Community Engagement Advisor with the Scottish Police Authority. And also Jim Walk is here today, who's standing in for Alan Fairbairn, Local Senior Officer with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Claire, any apologies?
Chairman, apologies from Councillor Yen, who's been substituted by Councillor Ferguson, who's not at the meeting yet. So 10 members present.
Thank you. Members, any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Members, could we go to the meeting of 26th of February 2015 for approval? Okay, thank you. Members, before we start, could I just give a wee bit of feedback from the joint community planning event I attended at the Community Planning Partnership and Scrutiny event hosted by Police Scotland on the 24th of April. The event was looking at the process Police Scotland will go through in developing the local community policing plans. Assistant Chief Constable Kate Thompson, who we all know is leading the review and engagement, and highlighted that local plans are formed by consultation locally through community surveys and councillor scrutiny. There was discussion on scrutiny and the role of this committee. Richard Whetton, the National Advisor Safer Communities, highlighted that Dumfries and Galloway are heading in the right direction with their scrutiny of both police and fire services. We have offered an invitation to the Assistant Chief Constable to engage with the whole Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee on scrutiny and local planning, and we're hoping that Kate could make the next meeting chair. I think we're planning for. Okay, item 4, Police Scotland Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan Annual Performance Update 2014-15. The purpose of this report is to present the Police Scotland Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan, which I think you've got a copy, the Annual Performance Update for 2014-15. Mike, would you like to speak to your report?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for giving me the opportunity to come here today and provide you with an update on performance for Police Scotland V Division in the reporting year 1st of April 2014 to 31st of March 2015. The policing priorities contained are set out in the local policing plan, which was approved by the full council. The plan sets out the key priorities for policing in the region, and whilst it's reflected nationally set up priorities were produced following consultation with local communities and partner agencies, the priorities also focus on policing those issues of greatest concern to the local community. The plan was aligned to Priority 5, the Dumfries and Galloway Single Outcome Agreement. We will maintain the safety and security of our region. As I said, the date is from the 1st of April to the 31st of March 2015. At the very start, I would just like to say to members that I'm giving an offer that at subsequent meetings I'd be quite keen to bring along someone. We'll give you a performance report update at subsequent meetings, but what we'd also like to do is do a second input, and at that input we'd like to give you an update on issues that are topical to the local policing operation at that particular time. If you were to ask me today what do I think is of value come the 3rd of September when we do the next performance report, just now it obviously would be fatal road traffic crashes, road traffic stats for the region, or it would be about domestic violence or drugs figures in the region, because the number of supply charges has went up significantly in the last 3 months. So from the very start I just want to put that offer in, ask me questions on it if you so wish, members, but before I go through the actual performance report and give you a contextual understanding of it, I just want to say that might help things as we move along in trying to expand that local agenda and the localism from a V Division perspective. Turning to the report, it's pretty self-explanatory. If we go to the priority antisocial behaviour, including alcohol-related violence, our aim is to reduce antisocial behaviour throughout D&G by working with partner agencies to community to prevent, tackle and reduce antisocial behaviour, crimes and offences. The really notable piece of data here is that violent crime is down significantly across the region between 2014 and 15, 19.4%, and that the detection rate is up 3.6%. And as you'll see, I've highlighted in the report that the area remains one of the safest areas of the country in which to live and work. This is particularly significant. There was a lot of hard work went into this, and it reflects the consultation we did do with the local community about keeping people safe. And to try and put that in context, that significant reduction in violent crime is also about less victims out there, keeping people safe. You'll see that I've put in bold the anomaly that still exists between the two wards, the Abbey ward and Nithsdale, the area committee boundaries, which cause us, in terms of data collection, a slight issue. But as you go through the report, you'll see that it breaks down quite nicely. I touch on it later in the report, but one of the things to note in terms of violent crime was there was quite a significant reduction in serious assaults in 2014-15. Now, there had been a change to the definition of serious assault, so that has had an impact, but we still believe, if you look at the measures that we've been implementing to try and tackle violent crime, and you'll see that on the report on page 3, some of the factors that have been impacting on it, you can see that alcohol continues to play a significant part in assaults and serious assaults, domestic violence, etc. You'll see that I've given some data on the kind of age profile for people that come to our attention, and there's also there obviously a reference to care establishments in the region, because that has been, we have seen repeat offences at those premises, and we're doing work just now across the region in that respect to try and reduce the number of victims and keep the figures down. And you'll see some of the issues, some of the tactics that we're employing are targeting repeat offenders. What does that mean? It means that when we know that someone's getting out of the prison, and we know that they have previous convictions, for example, for serious assault or robbery, then there's certain tactics which I don't want to touch on here, but they will employ with them to try and stop that reoffending. And it does have an impact and help us to get the figures down. We're targeting hotspots, bail offences. There's a strict, especially in terms of domestic violence, pay a lot of attention to that, and a lot of targeted police enforcement work. When you look at the number of, then move on to reducing the number of antisocial behaviour crimes and incidents across the region, you'll see that disorder is down 16.5%, and the antisocial behaviour is up slightly. The reason for that is, and I can confirm this, is that the data capture set for the legacy arrangement under Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary relied on the local image, what we call the local image system, and its data capture had a number of fields that you could employ when you're trying to capture that antisocial behaviour, whereas the new storm system that was employed from May last year is much more accurate. There's only like 4 codes for it, so you get a much more accurate reflection of what the actual figures are. What we're actually seeing is we've seen an increase, especially towards January to April, but since when the system came in, the new storm system came in May, when we're doing apples against apples now, what we're starting to see is it's reducing quite significantly what was the increase, and that's because of we're now using we're comparing the two same systems as opposed to the legacy system. So, as I say, that's disorders down, antisocial behaviours up. There's other tactics being again employed to try and address that. You'll then see that there's a piece here that I've put in terms of stop and search in the national position. That's to provide members with an update on that and where we are with stop and search from a national perspective. What I would also mention is that I've brought the most recent improvement plan 1.1. It's in the room, it's for the chair, circulated to other members, it's on the website, it's not a document that we're not hiding, it's there, and that gives you a clear update on stop and search and where we are with the improvement strategy for that and what is the national position. In terms of the local position, you'll see from the figures that the what we call the positive hit rate is up 3% on the previous year on 13-14, which is very pleasing. The reason for that, we think the number of actual people who were subject to stop and search was down, but the hit rate was up. Why we think that's happened is because there was a real focus on right people, right time, right place, which is always really what we've done in D&G, and also the drugs figures had an impact as well, with a lot of success in terms of drug supply. What I would say to members as well is reassurance. The majority of stop searches in this region continued to be under legislative authority. They were not consensual. I think that's an important point. Then move on to substance misuse. You'll see that in terms of the number of deaths through illegal substances, that was down in the previous year. Obviously, having any is not a good place to be. A lot of work going into that, and obviously we had one potentially at the weekend, which is we're working on just now, so that continues to be an issue for us. But in terms of, you'll see there that the drug supply figures are up quite significantly on the previous year, and that's down to a lot of proactive work and a lot of targeting. They're also, in the first 3-4 months of this reporting year, 15-16, what I would say to you is they're up again, and that again is down to a lot of good work. We have got what we classify as a crime car operating on the motorway. You've probably seen at the weekend that it had another capture on the motorway, £100,000 of herbal substance. So that's just another example of some of the detections that we're getting. Although that's having an impact on the national perspective, it's also having an impact locally because it comes back here. So that's very pleasing to see. Again, I've highlighted the kind of anomaly with the wards between Abbey Ward and Nithsdale Stewart Area Committee boundaries. Then move on to crime, and you'll see that Group 3 crime was down 9.7%. The flip side to that is that house break-ins were up. The start of last year, April 2014, was a particularly challenging time for us with house break-ins. We were getting targeted by criminals from outside the area. However, due to some hard work and good results, we then got a number of detections, and a number of individuals appeared at court. They were sentenced, and members may be aware that part of that kind of house breaking spree was the museum at Dumfries, and some members may be aware that an individual appeared at Dumfries Sheriff Court on petition in relation to that crime. So someone has been charged with that, and the fiscal is now taking it through the criminal justice system. So again, yeah, we've got other individuals who are waiting to appear, go through the criminal justice process in terms of house break-ins from end of last year and the start of this year. See, some of them have been on remand and are now out, but they're going back in. Then if we move on to public protection, domestic abuse, Police Scotland really will put a lot of emphasis into this, and you can see from the figures, slight reduction on the previous year in terms of the detection rate. However, what I would say to you about this is that, again, members will be cited on the fact that there were some pretty high-profile cases went through the High Court in the last 6 to 9 months. Individuals who have been out in the community who have committed some quite horrendous offences and some quite lengthy prison sentences handed out at the High Court to individuals from the Dumfries area, Stewart area, and from Stranraer. So that goes right across the whole region. So that's again down to a lot of hard work there, a lot of effort. The difficulty is that you don't get these cases through. When you're working with forensics, you don't get the forensics results straight away, so it takes a bit of time for you to get the analysis through and get that, and then work on the other evidence you've got. But that's certainly produced a lot of good results. If I then turn to violent crime, a bit more detail, members will see that, again, as I highlighted before, robbery detection rate is very healthy. Reduction, it's down 11% on the same period last year. I then touch on serious assaults, and that was just to mention that change in the definition. It's a significant decrease. I think that the coming year, 15-16, it was a good year last year, will present challenges for us as we, the detection rate right now I can tell you is very good for serious assault, but we're certainly over for commission rate in 15-16, and that'll down to us to put more. We're working on it, and we'll get the result of the forensics through, and that'll help us in that regard, and we'll be targeting repeat offenders. You would see, another thing I should highlight when it comes to violent crime is, especially the sexual element to it, there is without doubt greater confidence now, and in particular in terms of domestic violence, for victims to come forward, and we certainly get a lot of historical cases. We've got one just now in the West which goes back 20 years, and that's just the confidence of that individual to come forward. I also can't give you any more detail, but we see a pattern of that happening across the region, and because we've got a unit, and we use a unit from up the road from Police Scotland who allows us to bring in people who are new to the area and who are not known, they're not local police officers, that obviously can help us to work with the victims. Also, would highlight the fact the councils and your members' contribution to that, because you may remember the old legacy force had an underspend. That money's now been used to secure admin support to the unit and for advocacy, which again helps to deal with domestic violence, historical cases, etc., sexual crime, and has a positive impact. If I then turn to the asset seizures, I'm sure that will interest members. The figure for 13-14 was good, and then we surpassed that in 14-15. 13-14 related to quite a big local case. There was a lot of money seized there, which will go through the High Court in due course. And again, it was good to see what we were able to seize in 14-15. And we're trying to maintain that this year, but obviously it's a challenge. What I would say is that the crime car that we have on the motorway, the big seizures, that does allow us to then look at options for seizing cash from criminal fraternity, serious and organised crime groups, and Police Scotland is certainly very proactive in that regard. If I then turn to reduce offending with young people, you'll see that it's down in 14-15 in comparison with 13-14, and obviously that's very encouraging. The early effective intervention programme is having an impact there, youth justice and that type of work. The only caveat I would put on it is in terms of the work we're doing just now in terms of private or care establishments across the region, which obviously are impacting just now on the local policing operation. The other, coming to road safety, you would see that fatal road traffic accidents were down, crashes, were down in the previous year, 23%, but serious road traffic crashes were up. Overall, however, the number of crashes, we are still on target to meet the Scottish Government's targets for 2020. What I can tell you in terms of this reporting year, 15-16, last year fatal road traffic crashes were down, serious were up. This year it's the flip. We're up 2 in terms of fatal RTCs, but we're down significantly. I think it's something like 17% in terms of serious road traffic crashes. So when you're comparing year against year, we're very careful in terms of contextualising it. So we are doing a lot of work. We're working with the council, the local authority, in terms of securing money. We know that the demographic in the region tells us that when we look at the accident profile, there are certain young people and older drivers that we need to look at. So we're working with the council, local authority just now to try and secure some funding so that we can do some educational programmes in that regard, and trying to continue the work that's already getting done, try and extend that. And you'll see that I've made comment there about the number of presentations are down, and there's a attached report makes comment on that, and the explanation for that is I actually asked the traffic inspector, look, tell me why that's happening, why is the number of presentations down? And he says, quite simple, he says, we're doing less presentations, but we're capturing more people. He says, we're now going to doing 2 or 3 presentations and I have the email here, over the period, and he says, we're capturing something like, I think it's something like 12 to 1,600 kids, whereas before, to capture all those kids, what was happening is we're having to do more presentations. So he says it's a more focused approach, and that's why it's showing that anomaly there. The terrorism figures, refract intelligence logs, that's the number of logs that are going in terms of terrorist-related or issues that meet that type of criteria. A lot of that's from the port unit at Stranraer. And then I went on to explain the complaints about the police. I was quite keen to put that in. I know that in other divisions, that data is not included. I don't think I'll put it in here. I know it's a recommendation from HMICS, so it's in here. It's very general because of the collecting sources, but it will get better. I did highlight the fact that, just so members are aware, there's no police officer suspended from duty and discipline at this time in the region, which is good. Yes, there is a new process in place. Police Scotland, the budget's been cut, so we have to rationalise our processes so that it now goes through a process where the main unit for capturing that data is in Glasgow. So, and they've brought in a streamlined process to try and make it more efficient and to try and give a better service to the public. The flip side to that is, in terms of the data capture, it's maturing, and we will have better data in the future. What I can tell you, in terms of comparison with the rest of the West, for V Division, it's very favourable in terms of the percentages. And that's the report, members, for 14-15. Very good performance the last year. The most pleasing aspect is the fact that violent crime is down and the detection rate is up. And you'd also probably see that recently there's been a number of moves in the division. The people that are in place in the division are all local people. You probably see that in the recent articles. They've been in the division for a considerable period of time under the legacy force, and including myself. So that's the report for 2014-15. The challenge for me and the team will be to take this forward in 15-16 and to continue the performance of the last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mike, for that comprehensive report. Open to members for questions. Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a couple of, first one's a fairly minor point. If you look at the table on page 10, it's to reduce incidents of alcohol-related violence. You've got the breakdown for each of the areas, and the total for the division is 141. Well, my arithmetic puts it 146. The next one down is consuming alcohol. It's a total is 101. Again, my arithmetic is 106. And also in page 13, the total is 180, and yet the true total is 186. There seems to be a common thread that the arithmetics. It's a fairly minor point, but it seems to be out on every occasion. That's the first one. If you
look at the report, so you'll see that I highlight at the very start that the anomaly that's been created, and it happened the last time, is the fact that cumulative figures include anomalies. Abbey Ward sits in both Nithsdale and Stewart Area Committee, and that's having an impact on our figures because it's creating this. When you start to count them, I was the same, because when I got the figures from up the road, I went back to them a number of times and said to them, look, this doesn't make sense, they don't add up. And then they explained the fact that it's down to the two wards sitting within the Stewart Area Committee.
Being the Abbey Ward member, that's my fault. The second one is in relation to the drugs death. You said the average over 10 years about around 7. Yet the last 2 years it's been 11 and 12. You mentioned the drugs death at the weekend. I understand there may have been 1 or possibly 2 the weekend before. Is this maybe a pattern that's developing?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very disappointing when we have any drugs deaths. We're certainly putting a lot of effort into being proactive on the drug supply front in the area. The number of supply cases last year were up significantly on the previous year, and this year it's up again with the number of charges, and obviously there's been some high-profile cases have went through the courts. And there's a big one pending just now. Do I think there's an issue? We've got some work ongoing just now with Scott Jardine, the harm reduction officer, to try and get. I could come here and try and give you my gut feeling on it, but I don't really want to do that till we've got the analytical work completed to give us some, because some of the reports are still pending in terms of toxicology coming back from up the road. It's suspected that may be the case, but at this point in time, it would be I'd be premature to actually make a judgment on it.
Yeah, I think, and probably I can understand you can't really answer this just now. I was actually thinking more of a commonality of supply within the related cases, but I appreciate you're not in a position to comment on that.
I think the supply charges going up are because what's happened is that Police Scotland asked us to identify a local performance target for the area. Every division gets the opportunity there is the performance target suite. However, you nominate something that you think is something that you would like to address in your area. And what happened is that I selected drug supply back in 2014-15, and we maintained it for 15-16. And because it's there, and because that's the divisional target, we put a lot of effort into it. Obviously, not just because it's a performance target, because it's about positive outcomes for the local community, and that's part of the reason you will see an increase next year. And you will see an increase because we're putting a lot of effort into it, and it's for the very reasons that were touched on here about, the potential drug deaths.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I've got, it's 4 questions. Is it okay if I just sort of bash them out and then get... Okay, thanks. So it's just actually back onto the drugs seizures, as it were. So bottom of page 13, top of page 14, and it sort of outlines, it gives you the area breakdown, but it also acknowledges the seizures from the M74, which obviously passes through Annandale and Eskdale. I'm presuming that's counted separately because it's a different type of measurement, although it is recorded sort of later on in terms of the amount of seizures in terms of cash that's maybe transiting through the region. But I'm just wondering how best to interpret that data really in terms of that separation from drugs that are seized passing through the area and those that are, I suppose, cultivated or produced in the area for supply, etc. That'd be the first one. The second one is to do with the hate crime detection figures on page 15, where the target's a 88% target, if you like, but in Nithsdale, Annandale and Eskdale for the previous year, it's dropped down to minus 12%, minus 15.9%. So the narrative suggests it's encouraging to note, but I'm sort of thinking, are we talking about detection here, or is it to do with increased reporting? The third one is...
Mikey, are you okay if we take 4 questions at once, or you want to take these 2?
Okay. Well, I'll keep bashing away there, aye. The third one, page 17, it's to do back to the sexual crimes, and I know this comes up a lot just because of historical issues, but in some cases the figures have gone down, suggesting either detection and resolution of the reported crimes. In other areas it's gone up, so I'm not sure really how to quantify what that means in terms of, it's historical, so you might see an increase, but then in other cases it's actually gone down, so is there a historical element of that which is no longer there, or how do I interpret that? And the final one is on page 20, which is to do with the road traffic detections, particularly for seatbelts and phone offences, which you explain that it doesn't actually include or account for the number of warnings that might have been given. Now, I don't know if there's a comparable amount of warnings that were given in the previous year and the figures dropped for detections, or no warnings were given in the previous year and the figures don't reflect the offences, if you like, where a common sense approach has been taken, for example, this year. So I don't really know if I'm comparing like for like. So it's just really a wee bit more information on that. Thank you.
Yeah, try and answer them as you asked them, Councillor. In terms of drug seizures from the motorway and in terms of Annandale and Eskdale, the answer to that is that that data will be included in the Annandale and Eskdale figures from the motorway, because it's on the M74. The one thing I would say is that members will be aware that there is a case outstanding, quite a significant case outstanding from down in the Annan area, which is going through the judicial system just now, which has generated a number of detections and a number of arrests. So obviously that's very positive. The hate crime one's an interesting one. What we've seen is that there is an increase in reporting. There is more a willingness now by police officers, and you'll see a further increase in it in 15-16, to report hate crime. In the past, there was a reluctance for them to report it because it meant going through a process, through a system. However, the courts take it very serious. So what we see now is that officers they're reporting it as part of an aggravation. When it happens, it goes through the court, and the sheriff takes a very dim view of it. And that's one of the reasons that's went up. Plus, there's also more confidence in the local community to report it. And that's definitely a factor that's playing out there. I mean, for this fiscal year, 15-16, we've seen hate crime up again, and a lot of that as people come, especially in the first 2 months of this year, we'd obviously had some hot weather, a lot of drinking, and we've seen a lot of people post a custody arrest, making racial comments to police officers, various comments, and there was a lot of reporting of that, and that increased it. So that's the answer for that. The sexual crimes ones, yeah, that is, yeah.
Chair, just on the hate crime detection, I understand that, but I think what's presented, it would be helpful maybe to actually see the increase in number of reportings, so then I could actually understand that, yes, there's been an increase, so the detection figure is relative to that increased confidence in reporting that, if you like.
That's a fair point, Chair, and I can get that I can get a report to members and let them know what the figures actually tell us in terms of the increase for the next meeting. More than happy to do that, because we've got that. That data is not difficult for us to give to you. We've got that. That's okay. Sexual crimes one, yeah, that's an interesting, good question. You tend to see fluctuations in this one because you get cases that in certain areas that produce multiple offences. For example, you'll have seen some that have went through the court where there are multiple offences involving individuals, and they have an impact on the figures, because last year we had 4 cases at the start of the reporting year, which generated a number of offences. So that gets recorded, and it'll be in particular areas, and you'll see it going down elsewhere. So it does fluctuate. For example, 15-16, we're down right now 30% on last year, and the reason for that is because we had some really high-profile cases in 14-15, in particular, start of 14-15. 15 and 16, we don't, so it's had a drop. And the last point, seatbelt offences and the mobile phones. The first year of Police Scotland, they were targets, and the second year of Police Scotland, we were allowed to use more discretion, and as a consequence of that, that's had an impact on the figures. What's interesting is that you would see that the number of seatbelt and mobile phone detections are down. However, the number of fatal road traffic crashes were also down. So it's trying to draw a correlation. You know what I mean? So this year it's on a par. If I compare this where we are right now with with the same period last year, the number of Group 7 offences is about the same.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. So in a sense, the outcomes achieved in that the number of fatalities or casualties is on a par without the targeting that you had in the first year. But in terms of, I don't know how much meaning to give that table of figures then, because I don't really know what the incidence is, how important it is, or how it compares, because it's not comparing like for like. I understand what you're saying, but equally, I don't know how meaningful then that report of figures is, because you could have 0 there and the number of fatalities could be the same, and it would be, well, we didn't really need to hear about that report anyway because it's got no relevance. Or it may be relevant, but it doesn't signify anything particular.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Yeah, fair point.
Okay, Stephen. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I suppose just coming on the back of what Stephen was saying, when we look at 3.7 of the report, it asks us if the information we receive tells us what the implications of not meeting a target are, and I would agree that that information isn't there on the cases where the force isn't reaching the targets that are set. You know, we don't know the outcomes from that, and therefore what effect that have on the region. But that's just a point of note at this stage, Chair. My question is going forward, and Mr. Leslie intimated earlier on, and it's a point that I raised at area committee when the area report was raised to us, and we had some lengthy scrutinisation and discussions on it at that time. But I think it's important because these are public papers as well, and I actually think, and you mentioned earlier on, that certain amount of the crime that has taken place, and I suppose especially in relation to Annandale and Eskdale and Wigtonshire, there is taking place or perpetrated by people from out with the area. And in the report that we had, you know, we had an attempted murder and various robberies and that, which were from, you know, suspect and the victim were both from out with the area. So I think that it's important that somewhere within the report there's a note of that, so that the public are aware of that fact too, because in one sense that actually makes this area an even safer place for people to live and work if a fair percentage of that crime is being committed from people out with the area, even though they may be detected, as you've proved in your figures. But I just think it's something that could be worth having in future reports. I'm not saying a section aligned to every single part of the crime, but even if there's some narrative on that, just so an explanation of that, so people are aware of that, I think would be worthwhile. And going on to the complaints about police, Chair, I've just a question. The Professional Standards Department that investigate these complaints, is that a completely independent body to the police authority, or is it part of that? Just so that we were clear for that. So again, we know that if any complaints that have been investigated are completely independent.
I believe it is, Craig, but I'll let Mike.
Yeah, getting back to the anomaly with people coming into the area, yeah, that's a fair point. In particular, given the relevance, putting that in context with some of the violence that we've seen in some of the issues, the assaults we've seen in disorder in 15-16 in your area, committed by individuals coming into the area. And we're clearly working with licensees in that particular area to try and address that. But that is prevalent, and that's not difficult. I'm glad, I'm actually reassured that at the area committee, the area inspectors and chief inspector are briefing you on that, because that they should be. And it's only right that you get to hear about that. The second point, I've actually lost the second point. Sorry.
Complaint.
Professional standards is, no, it's a unit within Police Scotland who are based for us in Glasgow, who collate. They are independent to the local division. They are police officers. They are police officers prominently from the centre, but they will, if it's a criminal matter, they will investigate it. If it's non-criminal, then it will come to the division. The division will investigate it. However, what happens is that all these matters can then be referred to the IPCC, and that happens on a regular basis. If people aren't happy, you probably don't know if you've seen the letters that I put out. I actually say it in the letter. Look, if you're unhappy with the resolution to this, then you've got 3 months to make a formal complaint to the IPCC, and a number of people take up that option.
Richard?
Thanks, Chair. I note that the stop and search has produced a more positive hit from going up from 24% to 27% fruitful searches. Obviously, would like to get to actually improve this. You're talking about using an intelligence-led approach, and it's welcome that they're looking at a code of practice and the results of the Search 5 pilot. Where do you think, looking forward to the future, where do you think a realistic target would be for successful stop and search? Obviously, the situation in Scotland is well, we use stop and search a lot more than people south of the border. That's my first question. The second one is on sexual offences, which show a large rise. Is that due to the reclassification of the offences like violence, or because it doesn't seem that, well, there may be some change in attitudes and people more willing to report crimes, but it seems quite a large jump as a reclassification there. And just following on from Councillor Thompson's point about meaningful data, obviously there's a decrease in successful cases of mobile phone usage and seat belts. Obviously, that could be to do with less effort being put into those areas. How can we make the data more meaningful by flagging up that campaigns have been taking place to target various priorities, and maybe one year you've got a target on mobile phones and the next year you don't. How do we get that information to understand the figures better?
Chair, a couple of sexual offences, that's purely down to the fact that you get, as I touched on before, you get some cases that will generate various numerous charges that go back, that are normally historical, go back over a number of years. It'll be a period of abuse over a number of years. There was an individual in Dumfries who got 13 years at High Court end of last year, this year, and that involved an indictment that had 30 charges on it. So those 30 charges, and then you have other high-profile cases. There was an individual from the Stewartry, similarly, who got 7 years. So that's why you see the flux, because some years you get these cases coming in with a historical perspective on it, with a lot of charges, people coming forward, and then the next year, as I say, we're down this year in comparison with last year, because last year had 4 cases across the region that had numerous historical elements to it. In terms of stop and search, I don't know what would be the target. I think for me it's not actually looking at the actual target, it's the actual positive outcome. It's the results from the drug searches, from the recovery of weapons, and alcohol, and it's about that positive thing about keeping communities safe and doing the best you possibly can for local people. So I'm not trying to fudge it. I just don't know what the target should be. It should be about, for me, it's not about the target, it's about the outcome. It's about keeping the place safe and using the tactic to do that, to make, could we, get the intelligence in. It's right people, right place, right time. You know who they are. So we target them and we focus on them. And the mobile phones, it's a difficult one to try and give you some context round about that. When we get serious road traffic accidents, we are always very keen to recover any mobile phones from the vehicles, because you need to try and establish if people have been using them at the time of the accident. And there have been accidents in the past where it's apparent that people may have been texting or doing other things. So I'm trying to give you a kind of practical element to it. Yes, the number of detections last year were down fatals were down, but the number of serious road traffic accidents were up. Comparing year on year is very difficult because it can be a seesaw effect. It's better to compare it over a 3 or 5 year average, and I'm sure that'll mature and that'll come through time when Police Scotland when we've got 3 years worth of data, it'll make it more meaningful.
Yeah, you mentioned the code of practice here. Has that been brought in yet for stop and search? When do you think of that? And has the local division looked at the Search 5 pilot's conclusions and changed its strategy on that?
Yes, the improvement plans there, and that's been rolled out, and that's part of an education process. The point I was making before, make it again, is that what we've tried to do is in Dumfries and Galloway, it's always been that we were very much focused in on the legislative. We have the smallest number of stop searches in Scotland, but we've got the highest positive hit rate. And that's down to, in my opinion, down to right people, right place, right time. We've always been very focused about it. We've used it as a tactic when we thought it was proper to employ it, and getting back to that point about keeping people safe.
Councillor Forster. Oh, it's the wrong Graham.
Right. Mrs. Thompson, it's spelt a different way. Spelt a different way. Right. Complaints about the police. It's quite alarming that they've gone up, not by 44 as written in this document, but in fact by 54, which raises the percentage from 26.3 to 32.23. No, 32.34. But on top of that, we have 55 complaints per 10,000 police incidents, whereas in the whole of Scotland, it's only 34.3. I wish they would use the same calculator when they're working at the speed of my car. That'd be a big help. But is there a real reason for this?
There's a new process in place, and that's bedding in. We're getting a lot of complaints coming in now via the internet and on the email system. So it's getting back to try to compare it year on year. I would much rather just wait and see, because I've highlighted in this report that there's a new process in place, and we need to bed that in, and then we'll eventually get the opportunity to compare like with like. It's very difficult just now because it's very much a seesaw effect. It's been brought in. We were still using the legacy arrangements previously as part of the reporting year, and then this has been brought in, and so you get that. You're not really comparing apples with apples right now. You're comparing apples with pears. So we get a bit of time, and we get, then we get to the 3 year average. Then the data will be much more accurate. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to try to bring you some complaints data so you had it, so that it's part of the reporting process, because I know that at other divisions that data is not being provided, and I think it's important that you get an understanding of that. The most important thing for me in there is that we haven't got anybody suspended.
You do appreciate that your sums are wrong.
Well, the figures that have been supplied by the centre, by PSD, because that's a straight lift from what I asked them for. So, on behalf of Police Scotland, I apologise.
Through you, Chair, it's nice to be able to blame somebody else. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. Run it.
Thanks for that. A lot of this stuff we've managed to tease out today, the committee, and it's very common right across, so I won't bore everybody, but there's a couple of things I want to tie together. And some members have already mentioned about the complaints against the police. As a former chair of the complaints subcommittee, the one thing that gave confidence was the independent scrutiny and dip sampling of the complaints, and we could see the nature of the complaints. So it's just a matter I'd wanted to flag up to you, to the PSD, is that once the new system's up and running, I mean, there's a question mark about police policing themselves, but you're saying there's a degree of independence there. But what I'd like to see sometime in the future is a report from them breaking down so we can see, because we've lost that link that we could give that confidence to. It ties in nicely with 3.5. And just reading that again, during the reform of policing services, the creation of the new national body during 2013, both the Dumfries and Galloway Council and the Police Scotland agreed to work to a non-statutory guidance document. Now, at the time of the creation of a single police force, there was only Fife and Dumfries and Galloway that had coterminous boundaries. So we had a committee system, as it were. The rest were joint boards from different councils. The question I'm trying to get to, if that's non-statutory, what assurance have we got that you or I could just say, oh, that's enough, we've had enough, and the system falls apart? Because I didn't appreciate at the time of the transfer this was a non-statutory thing. I thought it was because we were already up and running. So it was quite, probably true, and it's several years ago now that we're going through that, but maybe it's a hard question for you to answer, Mike, but and maybe Derek and yourselves can maybe answer this together. I would like an assurance that the format we have here will always be supported. If it's non-statutory, you have the option to pull out at sometime in the future, or so that's basically tying in the accountability part with the robustness of the situation we have here.
Yeah, for me, that it's all about local accountability. I mean, at the very heart of this, and I keep saying this, is policing by consent. The police are the public are the police. And local democratic accountability is at the very heart of that. And for me, I want to bring that data along. And maybe hopefully the next step for this is that you're trying to bring together 8 legacy arrangements. And hopefully, what we will get to is that we'll go back to a situation where that'll be part of it. I'll take that up the road. I mean, it's something that I think the inspectorate, who are coming to inspect us later on in the year, in the autumn, are keen to look at, because they've made comment on it or reference to it in the inspection of previous divisions. Hence, why I put that in here today. So, and I think that's something that I'll take that up the road and speak to them about it, and something that we can develop and mature.
It's certainly not a criticism, it's just an observation that, I just don't know how robust that agreement is. The other thing is there's 32 other, or 30 odd other councils, and just wonder what arrangements they have, because you were saying the legacy, it was easier for Fife and Dumfries and Galloway to keep that structure. The others, I'm not sure, and I asked this question at the last committee, and nobody really answered it. How is police scrutinised across all the other local authorities now? If it's similar to Dumfries and Galloway, or do they have a different arrangement?
I don't know the answer to that. That's the bottom line. I'm too busy trying to worry about V Division. But I'm sure that's something for, when with national meetings, and I'll refer to Derek on that, probably needs brought up and looking at that, and it's probably maturity, development of the legislation.
Well, I'm sure Eleanor at the back of the room there was sort of dying to come in there. We'll maybe know a wee bit more about it. Derek, do you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to come forward, Eleanor? Right, Eleanor's coming.
Some kind of overview of the information that we have on the various arrangements across Scotland, if that would be helpful. I can liaise with Derek and get that to him and to the chair if you would be interested in hearing that, because there are maybe about 4 different models sort of used across Scotland, but some are changing already as councils review and develop, and a few years in.
Thanks for that. The reason I asked the question is we did a bit of benchmarking over the years, and how it would be difficult if we all got different models to benchmark against like for like. So once we get that information, it'll be easier for us to just look across Scotland to see how we're performing, in the scrutiny role. Thanks.
I think the committee structure is a wee bit different, Ron, it is in other authorities where they don't have a police fire and rescue committee, it's tied in with other committees, which makes a wee bit of a difference as well across the country. Thanks for that, Eleanor. Does that answer your question, Ron? No other speakers? We go to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report from Police Scotland for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April 2014 to 31st March, as detailed in the appendix. I think, Ronnie, was you? No, I was just going to say, I'd like to thank members for the questions and thank Mike for answering. I think that's been a really good session and well scrutinised, I think. Thank you for that. Ronnie?
I just wondered if Claire could read out some of the action points that we've captured them all.
I can indeed,
Well,
Councillor.
I think Mike's been capturing them as well, because I'm sure he said if there was any sort of things outstanding, he would come back with more information on them the next time. But carry on, Claire.
Thank you, Councillor Ogilvie. I won't go into the detail again, but just some of the salient points, really. The local commander has offered to provide an update on any topical issues for the next performance report. Just to note that violent crime is down and detection rates are up. Issue around the sort of presentation of the raw data to allow some meaningful interpretation by members when they're looking at the performance reports. Issues around monitoring of the complaints and arrangements in other divisions and benchmarking opportunities to that effect. And I think there was a commander, you issued an invite to a meeting. I didn't quite catch what that was, just for recording in the minutes.
No, I'd be really keen to, as I say, bring someone along I can choose the topic, or let yourselves choose the topic. I can tell you what's really happening in the division over the first 6 months, and then give you options, and then choose one, and then scrutinise us on it. But let's, in terms of trying to drive that localism agenda, you know, let's give you a good feeling for what's happening in the region, and allow you to ask some telling questions of us and what we're doing about it. No, well, I'm a glutton for punishment.
No, I think that would be very agreeable to members. May I agree? Thanks, Claire, for have we captured everything, Donny, for you?
There are other issues, obviously, which we'll capture in the minutes in more detail. But
just before we go into the next item, it was mentioned by Mike earlier on that there's been so many changes lately, and it was a concern that some of the members have sort of drew up a wee sort of diagram of photos here, who's in place at the minute. It might have changed by next week, I don't know. But if they're any good to any of the members, I'll leave them at the table there and you can take them. It gives you an idea who's in charge at the minute. Right, thank you. Item 5. Police Scotland Contact Command and Control Division Update Report. The purpose of this report is to present the performance of Contact Command and Control Division for Police Scotland Dumfries and Galloway. Mike Lindsay and Gordon Smith, I apologise for no welcoming you earlier, Gordon. I never saw you walking by me there. They will speak to you, so for your report on that.
Thanks, Chair. I think I take the floor for this one. I'm conscious of the fact that I've sat in the only seat where I can't actually see you. Would you like me to move, or? That's better. Sorry, I can't see you now, Derek. It's, Chair, are you okay? Right, Chair, members, thank you for the invitation to come here today. I think by way of background, the reason I'm sitting here from Contact Command and Control Division and not one of my operational colleagues from Glasgow is that prior to the closure of the Dumfries Control Room last year, I was the head of service at the Force Communications Centre at Dumfries for 4 years. So I've got fair experience of presenting fairly detailed performance reports to this committee. And I think from the outset, Chair, I think it's fair to say, certainly I acknowledge and accept that the report that I've submitted probably doesn't meet the scrutiny requirements of the members or the committee. And again, I'll be sort of grateful for feedback on that today. That's the first point. The context of the report is obviously the closure of the Dumfries Service Centre and Control Room in May last year, which was a result of the restructuring approved by the Scottish Police Authority last January. What I would say, there's a bit of a theme here in terms of whether this type of scrutiny should be wrapped up in the Commander's report or whether it's a specific C3 report that you require on whether it's an annual or a 6-monthly basis. And again, I'd be grateful for feedback as to how you think that might work out in a similar vein to what we've done talking about the PSD. I suppose before I get into the report itself, the other thing I would say is that the Contact Command and Control Division does not have any sort of mature regime for reporting performance to the public or to scrutiny reports. We're still working on that. And again, I might be corrected from the back, but I think this is the first report of this type that's gone to a scrutiny committee across the country. And I think that's only reasonable because we're 1 year down the line from the closure of the local control room. So I think in that context, I'll talk through the report and present the highlights from the report itself. And rather than reiterate the entire report, I think I'll just bash on through that, Chair, and we can get to questions, which I think will be much more productive if that suits. That's great. Thank you. The key points are that since we closed the control room at Dumfries last May, all non-emergency calls, all 999 calls, are taken now for Dumfries and Galloway either at Motherwell or at Glasgow. And the reason that's two centres is that the two centres are joined up by technology. So basically, if you phone from a mobile phone or a landline anywhere in Dumfries and Galloway, you'll more than likely get Motherwell, but the fallback's to Govan. Then what happens is, if that call results in an incident being created, that is transferred electronically to a control room at Govan. And the local police officers down here are dispatched by airwave in much the same way as we did at Dumfries. The ICT systems, the systems we use to capture phone calls, to measure phone calls, to report on performance, and for incident data are completely different to those we used at Dumfries. And I think that's part of my frustration in presenting this report, is that it's very, very difficult to provide some comparative data. I think it's fair to say I've had a stab at it. I have some anecdotal information from past reports I've put before the forerunner to this committee, which I'm happy to verbally articulate. But again, I think similar to what the Chief Superintendent said earlier on, I think this scrutiny regime will evolve over time and that we'll get some baseline data that we can make future comparisons with. So to the figures themselves that are presented in the report, Chair, the problem we have is that the 999 calls from the whole of the West Command, which is the former Strathclyde area plus Dumfries and Galloway, we can't actually break them down into areas, even regions. So we get a sum total of just over 500,000 emergency calls go to Glasgow and Motherwell in the course of a year. And on average, we are taking 4.6 seconds to answer those calls against a target of 10. The 101 calls, because that's a fairly recent technology, we can split that up more accurately. So from the 2.9 million calls that go non-emergency to Glasgow and Motherwell each year, 87,523 for the end of May to the end of April year came from Dumfries and Galloway, either from landlines or from mobiles. Now, again, the target for answering a non-emergency call, and I would stress, Chair, that that's after the caller hits the voice recorder that gives you the option of lost and found, custody, do you want to speak to a particular officer or hold on for an advisor. The target's 40 seconds, and the average over the last year has been 20.6. And again, there are different ways of measuring call performance. That's not quite how we measured it in Dumfries and Galloway. We used to present the percentage of calls that we answered within the target time, so it's slightly different again. So again, the comparisons are difficult. In terms of incident data, again, the differences from the image system that Mr. Leslie mentioned earlier on and the storm command and control system that we use just now are probably even more significant in that we used image in Dumfries and Galloway to record pretty much everything, including a lot of admin functions. So that when we now go to storm, which contains incident data only, it's now impossible to make a direct comparison. So I didn't actually present any incident data, but anecdotally, having done a bit of research in the system, what I can say is that 38,495 incidents were created as a result of calls from Dumfries and Galloway over the year between last May and this April. Now that means from the total of almost 90,000 calls, we're generating roughly 38,000 incidents, so it's roughly a third, which again, it's roughly anecdotal, but that pretty much ties in with what we experienced in Dumfries and Galloway. The incident classification, in terms of the prioritisation of the incidents and how the police respond, has changed slightly differently as well. I've articulated that in the report, Chair. I don't intend to go into that in any detail, but I'll take questions on that later on. The other way we obviously measure how we're doing is through public satisfaction surveys. Now, the surveys that go out to members of the public in Dumfries and Galloway contain questions about how do you feel you were treated when you first contacted the police and how your information was taken. And again, this is coming in at over 90% on average across the year for members of Dumfries and Galloway who have been asked this question in the public surveys. Again, I would cast my mind back to performance reports that I've submitted in the past, and again, roughly analogous in that we were sitting about 94%, I think, on a 3-year average. That was between the years 2010 up to 2013, which was the last reporting year, obviously, before Police Scotland. So roughly analogous. I think probably what's missing from this report is the complaints data that Mr. Leslie referred to earlier on. I don't have a specific breakdown of complaints from the public of Dumfries and Galloway regarding the service they've received from Contact Command and Control Division. And again, I'll be very honest, I don't know if that data is available. And again, part of the complication of that is a complaint can come into the police, which may consider either just the first point of contact, or it may be about the police response, or it may be a combination of factors. So what you then sometimes find is it's a bit of a decision to make by PSD in allocating the complaint as to whether that comes to my division in terms of the first point of contact, or whether that goes to the local division to deal with something as a whole. The other point I'd pick out the report, most importantly I would say, Chair, is the impact that's had on our people in closing the service centre and the control room at Dumfries last year. I supervised 34 police staff who were involved in the consultation and whose posts were deleted as a result of the closure. And again, what I've presented there is the outcome for the staff at the point of transfer last year. And I think I've stated there that we still have 9 of the 34 remaining within the organisation. I was corrected by a former colleague today, it's actually 10. And to sum up, Chair, I think the stats are one thing, and what they tell us, as far as we can compare, is that the service in terms of answering the phone, dispatching the officers to calls, is analogous to what we provided at Dumfries and Galloway in the Force Communications Centre. And really that's our job, that's what it's all about. It's answering the calls as best we can and getting the right officer to the right job and the right priority. And again, I'd like to think that is a valuable support to the local commander in providing the report that he's put to you today. Chair, I have nothing more I wish to present. I think I've picked the highlights out of the report, and I think I'm more than happy to take questions if that's appropriate.
Thanks for that, Gordon. Unfortunately, a year on, I'm still getting quite a few complaints about the 101 service, but I'll let the members speak first, and then I'll come back. On for questions. Ian?
Thank you. It's on page 28, I think, line through it. It's on the prioritisation of calls. Has there been a change in policy, in particular to the grade 5 calls? What's considered a grade 5 call? I appreciate this is only anecdotal evidence, but it's from a chairman of community council who called for police assistance for minor disorder at a party that was happening within the village hall, and it was met with a point-blank refusal to dispatch the police. And also another case where it's been non-injury road traffic collisions, where they're merely advised, you exchange particulars and the police will not attend unless there's a hazard at the locus. Has there been a change in that?
There's certainly no change in the criteria for what we call a grade 5 or a non-attendance call. And Dumfries and Galloway, and certainly up to the point we closed last May, we had roughly a 3-grade policy, which was you had a grade 1, which was an emergency, threat to life, and the police go immediately, with a standard response, which is go at some point, and we had the non-attendance. And again, the criteria are the same as what I've published there for the grade 5 call, in that the service advisor assesses that as not requiring a police attendance, and that may be dealt with by other means, whether that's a phone call or advice at the point of call. So in terms of the actual criteria for the grade 5 call, no, the policy has not changed, and we had adopted the Police Scotland policy for the last year while the Dumfries and Galloway operation was still there. I suppose the execution of the policy, I'm not aware of any changes. I think anecdotally, I would say that it's true that Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary would probably have sent officers to calls that Police Scotland may not. And again, the control of that is whether the call gets out to the local officers in the first place. But in terms of your examples there, the road traffic accident, again, the criteria are set out by the Road Traffic Act in when police are or are not required. If it's a simple bump with no injury and the parties are happy to swap details, then the police won't attend, but that was the case beforehand with the Force Communications Centre. And sorry, I'm struggling to remember your first example.
The other example was minor disorder at a community event, where the police were requested to come, literally to come and calm the matter down, and it was denied. That is anecdotal.
Yeah,
I did request the date and time, and I would investigate it further, but unfortunately never came back with that information. Going back to the first one about the duties under the Road Traffic Act to exchange particulars, etc., and non-case road accidents, I can understand where members of the public may wish to do that. I know on a personal basis, I was involved in a road traffic accident on the M20, where there was although there were no injury, it was a Polish lorry driver that we could not converse at all. And yet, that was Kent Police at the time, declined, they would not come.
I'd like to think we'd have offered a translation service if nothing else. But, certainly that point's taken, and I suppose it's probably the area of work I'm in just now. I'm working in projects. I'm not involved in direct operational delivery of contact command and control services, but certainly anything that is anecdotal that we think we can investigate, please come forward with that. And again, of course, time, date, locus, phone number, more than useful. And again, my experience of 4 years of investigating complaints in the FCC, the process is very similar. I had a complaint this morning which has been passed on up to the management team at Glasgow.
Would you like to come in there, mate?
Yeah, I mean, this is at the very heart of making this transfer from Dumfries to the central position. As an aside, we all know that, budgetary pressures where we are, we've had to rationalise. We have had a number of learning points. I've got one from the weekend where I've got a complaint in, and it's I can't defend it, and I'm going to have to speak to. I spoke to Gordon this morning about it. We flagged it up the road to kind of reassure members. We've had meetings in the past with people from Govan, the management team, to flag to them things that we see that are not working. And it is that point about trying to understand localism. What's important down here and what impacts in the local community will be different to how it impacts in communities elsewhere in Scotland and what the threshold is. So what we're trying, working very hard with them now is to get them to understand what that threshold, and they are improving. We had some incidents at the very start where resources were deployed it was the same fix that they use up the road, which doesn't work down here. So to get them down the road to explain that to them, that won't work here. So there is dialogue between us and the people up the road. They take it on board, they go back up the road and try and make sure that the people are learning. It's the same people that are taking the calls for this area. And that's why I think Gordon's going to make the offer about going up there and getting an experience, getting an understanding of it and how it works. But yes, it is at the very heart. We are learning. I remember quite well because I was the chief inspector at Stranraer when we made the transfer. Some of us can go back that far. Remember the old calls going into the old stations at Stranraer, Newton Stewart, Dilbeatty, and then we created the Force Communication Centre at Dumfries. And I can remember the second day after that, we had a big learning experience, and it was all about that very topic. It was about local knowledge, because people in Stranraer call the port, in that area, made reference to a call to the port. They thought it was the port at Cairnryan or Stranraer, and it wasn't. It was at Port Patrick. So it's that local knowledge and local understanding. If that call had been in Stranraer, they would have understood that. So it's the same type of experience, but we're working hard on it and trying to improve the service, and that'll come as it matures through time.
I think that's quite enlightening that you recognise that, mate, because that's for the first time we've ever brought this up and it hasn't been seriously defended. And it's good to see that you're actually admitting that there has been problems, and there still is problems, and you're actually looking to address them. Just before I let you in, Richard, I think we've got an invitation there for the committee to go on a visit to Govan, which I think we could take in the football there, but I think it would be very beneficial, both for the staff at Govan and ourselves, because that's the people that have difficulties with at the end of their phone. So is there a sort of consensus and agreement amongst the committee for the Andrew Reid there to arrange that? Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Chair, I don't think they play football at Govan anymore, do they? You were looking for feedback on what you thought. I think it's important that we do get a sort of 6-monthly report on the operation of the call centre, especially as it's still bedding in. We're not sure whether the public are satisfied with it or not. On the survey you conducted of public opinion, does it apply specifically to the 101 service, or is it generally to the whole public experience of the police? I would like to think maybe in the future we would have a survey of people who use the 101 service, a sample selection of it that you could call back and say, were you happy with the service you received?
Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is no. I think it's more generally worded than that. I haven't got a copy in front of me, but I can certainly make one available to you. It's a degree. Were you satisfied with the way you were treated at first point of contact with the police? Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily have to be by telephone. That could be someone that walks into a front counter or sends an email. So yeah, so it's not differentiated, I think, to answer your question. And to pick up your second point, yes, it's probably well worth doing something slightly more detailed around the specific service in response to the calls. Certainly I can take that up with my own management if that's useful.
Thanks again, Chair. It's just a question on, I suppose, back to the grading, but also about tying in to understand. I mean, at the end of the day, people are phoning up because they want a response. And that response, once you get through on the phone, however long you have to wait, you'll maybe, if it's grade 1, 2 or 3, you'll expect an attendance. So will there be a way in future, or even at this time that isn't contained in the report, where you could say, well, if it's a grade 1, we know that we've issued an officer to attend at a priority and they got there in 5 minutes. Grade 2, we know that they got there within this amount of time. Grade 3, we got there in that amount of time. And grade 4, we did actually make the appointment that was scheduled. So in terms of people's experience of using the service, they're only phoning the number because they want somebody there, or to help them address the situation. So the phone is just a conduit to achieve that. So how can we tie up that information to get a fuller picture of the way the service has been delivered, and then, scrutinise that?
Yeah, indeed, it's an interesting point, and it comes back to what mentioned earlier on about our public performance regime in terms of how we report our performance to public is by no way developed, and certainly I'll feed that back into it. This has been a debate for as long as I can remember, and I've been around, again, like the boss, I remember when we moved the calls from the local stations to Dumfries, is that how do you measure how good that is? In terms of an emergency call, it's two things that are important. The first thing is also that the call's answered promptly. The second thing is that you take the time to gain the information you need. And the third time is you get someone rolling to that as soon as possible. Now, they're all things that can be measured. The bit that's to an extent an unknown is how far away is the nearest police officer when you get that call. So in terms of if you start the clock when the phone rings and you stop the clock when the police officer arrives, then there's a huge variable in that depending on how close the police officer is. And obviously I'm talking about emergency calls here. And part of the advantage we do have with the new IT systems, which I omitted to mention earlier on, is that the control room now know where the officers are and that they're located on a map. It's due a signal through the airwave terminal. So the control room now have a much better idea of where the nearest or more appropriate resource is in terms of emergency calls, and that then allows them to prioritise more accurately than I could in the FCC when I was really relying on local supervisors to tell me where they thought their officers were, if that makes sense. But I appreciate that's probably not fully answering your question. But in terms of the reporting criteria, certainly internally we use the measures that I've talked about, which is how long did we take to answer the phone, how long then did we identify an officer and tell that officer to go to the call, which is another measure that the system gives us. And again, the internal reporting criteria, our daily management meetings, as you can imagine, consider that, and the control room lead officers are scrutinised that on a daily basis. Now, what that's not done, that's not come out into the public domain yet, again, because we haven't formalised what our reporting regime is. I don't know to what extent that helps.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, and I understand it's still a work in progress.
Indeed, yeah.
But is that something that you plan to then somehow contain in a report in some appropriate fashion so that we could gauge, right, well, we know that in V Division that officers are actually being able to attend a scene within whatever amount of time. Obviously, how Police Scotland chooses to zone its resources so that it knows that it can respond to anything within a given period of time at a strategic level or tactical level, that's within Police Scotland's power,
yeah.
But we should be able to at least challenge, well, we are finding that on the ground, people aren't getting somebody for half an hour when they were needing them in 5 minutes, or whatever that might be. So we don't have any way of getting a wee sort of lever into that.
I think it's a relatively easy job to do the kind of the mechanical bits at the start, where how long did it take to answer the phone, how long did we allocate that cop to that job. But I think in terms of the response time, in terms of the officer, wherever he or she may be, then actually arriving at that locus, there are a huge number of factors that will make that quicker or slower, whether it's traffic, whether it's weather, whether it's the quality of the driving, whether it's just distance and geography. And we have a huge challenge with geography in Dumfries and Galloway, there's no doubt about that. In terms of a future scrutiny regime, I honestly don't know to what extent we've gone with that. And part of the challenge is around some of the stuff we've already talked about with different IT systems. Again, I think the expectation of Police Scotland would be to provide a similar level of detail to scrutiny boards all around the country. And again, we're still working with different ICT systems across the west, east and north that either can or cannot produce this type of data. And certainly coming from the image system at Dumfries, which I could not have told you this. And again, we could not have measured start of the clock to cop arriving in Dumfries either. I think we can now, but again, because of the variables, whether that would be something we'd want to do, I'm not sure.
Mike, will you want to come in this as well?
Yeah, very quick point for members, just to reassurance. The staff like the system. They like it. They like it a lot. The day we switched it on, I had an inspector come up to me the second day and say, I really like this because it's the command and control aspect of it. It's releasing the sergeants and the inspectors. It's giving them more time. Before, what happened is the call was allocated to the local sergeant or local inspector and they had to deal with it. Now you've got the command and control aspect of it, which the staff like, the inspectors like, and the sergeants like. It's a very, very professional way of dealing with the calls, and I'm sure you go up there and see it in operation. That'll give you a better understanding of how it operates on a day-to-day basis. Yes, we're learning. You know, it's a huge, huge switch that's been thrown, and we will make mistakes. It's going to happen, but we're learning from it, hopefully, and we're trying to go forward and improve the service and give you that assurance. And you're right, you really want to. This is one of the areas where you need the public to speak to you and give you that feedback, because the learning will come for us. More of the learning will come from yourselves in terms of, I think it's Gates that said that the greatest source he had of organisational learning from Microsoft was from his complainers. And that's got to underpin what we're doing here. It'll improve the service locally. You'll get the service you need.
I think that's exactly right, mate. Marion and then Ronan.
Thanks, Chair. There was 2 points. One of them we've already addressed, which was the 101. The other one was more for the most complaints I get really in my area is the fact that they no longer see the bobby, I call them the bobby and the beat, but excuse my phrase, but they don't see so much of the local police around the area. And when you do speak to them, they seem to be told to go never to the community safety team, and which is quite difficult because although they've got some powers and they actually are quite inundated with work on other areas, but they have. I've even heard them myself. I've witnessed them being verbally abused because they know that they have no power to do anything. So I certainly, from my point of view as a councillor, especially in my area, it was always good because you always were able to contact this locality. But we don't seem to have that now. I don't know who to speak to anymore or who to contact to try and see if we can get some patrols back. And I was just wondering, maybe, I know it's slightly off what we're doing today, but I just thought I'd take the opportunity when I had some.
I think it's probably the 2 elements to this. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, for that, it's probably speaking to the local. I'll speak to the local area inspector, and I'll get him to get in touch with you, and we can sort that out at a local level, because that's how we'll fix that aspect of that.
Was there another point about 909?
No, I was saying, because I do get complaints about the 101 not working, especially understanding our area, but I think Mike has made that pretty plain, that he is, which is really good to hear. Thanks,
Right.
Chair.
Okay, I'll just make sure you had it covered. Okay, run it.
Yeah, Chair. We've heard from Gordon that this is his first of this type of report anywhere in Scotland. It's an evolving picture. We've had assurances from Mike that there is localism issues and the invitation to go and have a look for ourselves. So that's great, and we can all get a feel for this, and they understand and we understand, and you can't beat a two-way communication. So I look forward to that. It's coming to the recommendation and how we move forward. There's a suggestion that we have a 6-monthly report, but once it's up and running, which has been offered, but I think in the fullness of time it should just be the local chief, and it's part of his report, like we used to do. And if there was an issue in there, we'd have the officer there who could speak to it. Well, we used to have Lorna for the finances and stuff like that. That seemed to work well. Rather than have a whole lot of reports, you just have the main report and specialisms. That's going forward. I mean, I think we do this piece of work of having a look, listen, take on the assurances that localisms will be flagged up, and take it from there. and hopefully we can get a meeting up to Girvan or that's my question. Sorry, Chair. When we heard it was moving, it was going to Johnston, or is that the fire one? That's the fire one. Nah, right. Sorry. Anyway, go to Girvan. Where Billy Connolly came from. Is that right? Yeah, Girvan. And Alex Ferguson, who does play football.
Thanks, Ron. We have had great difficulty with this. I mean, me and Ronnie was involved all through the Pathfinder process, and the emphasis was on local. And when it actually came into force, the local we felt was greatly taken away, which was feared from. We were told nothing would happen in the first year, and within 6 months, control centres were getting closed and everything. So it lost a bit of sort of a wee bit of confidence in it, in a lot of the members. And some of the instances we've had to deal with since then have been really difficult. I mean, you're talking about, Mike was talking about difficulty expressing the port. You want to try expressing Kellerholm and Sanker to these people in Govan because it's an absolute nightmare. It might be getting a wee bit better now, but we still have difficulties. And never before have constituents been told, we don't deal with this now, but we'll give you a number for your insurance. Because these are things that have been happening. And these are things, and I think it would, as I said earlier, it would benefit the people that take the calls meeting with us. And as Mike correctly said, I mean, we have a group in Kirkconnell that put up hanging baskets and things for the community, and people were knocking them back down. The people taking the calls didn't think that was a big issue. But there was hundreds of pounds worth and hundreds of hours spent on these things, and that was a big issue to these people. And that's what they want the police for. It might not have been a big deal to them taking the call, but it's a big deal to these people. And that's the people that are coming to us. And I mean, I think it is good to be able to meet with the police on a more casual basis and say, these are the things that's been happening, and these are the faults that they've had. And I know that the people have been doing here and that, but I still think there's a bit of work to do. We were just mentioning the jobs earlier, and it doesn't look too drastic to look now, but I'm just wondering how many police jobs have went altogether in Dumfries and Galloway since the force come in. I don't know if you get me the figures, mate, but I know it'd be interesting to know because there is concerns about jobs, and it'd be good to know these figures. Is there any other questions in this for members? Come on, Craig.
Chair, it's not a question, just so much a sort of comment, and the point that you made there about jobs within the locality. I mean, there does seem to be that bit of perception that everything again is being centralised from both forces that are present in the room today, and that is a real concern for members and for the public, because services that we're used to having are being taken away. I know that the police are still here, and the police are still, and the fire are still here and working very hard in Dumfries and Galloway, but there just seems to be that perception that everything is being centralised away from us. There's talk of Cornwall Mount closing now and various other issues like that. So I mean, that's a real concern for us.
Yes, I think because it happened earlier on, people are always a bit wary of what's going to happen next, and it's good because at the time there was nothing in the way of consultation. It just happened, and people are just frightened that that's going to happen again. Everybody okay? Do you want to go to recommendations then? Yeah. Members asked to scrutinise the performance of Police Scotland Contact Command and Control Division as detailed in the appendix. I think we've certainly done that. Just before we go away from the police, I think you've all got a copy of this. And I'd like to commend Police Scotland on raising the profile of crime in rural communities. A guide to security in the rural environment has been launched jointly by Police Scotland and NFU, the National Farmers Union Scotland. So each member should have a copy of it. The booklet provides simple crime prevention measures that can deter even the most determined criminals. Police Scotland have also established a National Rural Crime Prevention Steering Group, which associated action plan and now appointed rural crime officers in each division, who will work together with partner organisations such as NFUS and Scottish Land and Estates to prevent crime and protect rural communities. The launch of the booklet is the next stage in Police Scotland's activity to reassure rural communities that it takes rural crime seriously and that rural communities receive the same high level of service as other communities across Scotland. This is a positive step which will be followed up by more detailed prevention guidance for some types of crime. So I think we welcome that, as most of us do represent rural communities. Right, thank you.
Chairman, can I just record for the minute the trip to Govan, so it's an approved duty?
Yes, if you would, Claire, I think we've all agreed, and I'm sure Andrew will have great fun organising that. Okay, thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan, 2014-2017, Annual Performance Update, 2014-15. The purpose of the report is to present the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan, Annual Performance Update, 2014-15. Due to family bereavement, Alan Fairburn, Local Senior Officer, has sent his apologies. Jim Walk, Area Manager, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway Division. Jim's got to speak to the report. I'm aware, Jim, that you were looking for a member session next door after the meeting. Do you have any idea the time scales that will take, just so they can let members know, because it might be getting on? How long's your sort of presentation?
Thanks, Chair. The presentation, roughly about 20 minutes. I can condense it if it suits members better. But the main purpose of the presentation is to get some engagement on the new strategic plan.
Are members okay to attend that after the meeting? I'm just saying because it's getting on a wee bit, Chairman. Carry on in.
Chairman, I appreciate a few of the members have left. I'm given early notice. I have a medical appointment at 4:30. I'm going to leave here about 10 to 4. So my apologies for not staying.
Perhaps we could delay it till more members are present.
That's why I was asking the question there, Jim, because, you know, you would rather maybe leave it till we can get a full sort of complement there, because I know that there's 2 or 3 going to have to leave by the time you're finished.
Chair,
I know you prepared it now.
That's no a problem at all. The only problem with it is the engagement timescales is up until the end of June. And the other issue is that both Alan and myself will be on annual leave as of this week, really. So the opportunity may pass us by if we don't take it today. That would be the only concern I would have with that.
Can you think of any solutions, Derek? No, it's just that there's no real point if there's got to be 4 years or 3 years turning up, and you're not really engaging then.
Chair, I mean, I'm not being disrespectful, but if we got it here sooner, or it was sent prior to today, we could have had a wee read through it. Usually these things go through the area committees, so we feed in, and that's a consultation locally, then feed in the centre. I don't know how long it's been sitting waiting to be consulted on, but to give us an hour deadline, no disrespect.
Could I just come in there, Chair? It's actually not the formal consultation. This is an engagement session to get your thoughts and ideas on where the Fire and Rescue Service should be going for the next 3-year strategic plan. So the consultation period will come after the plan has been formalised, and then it will be sent out formally for consultation.
It's just, as it being a consultation, said that there are not going to be many is left here to consult. Ian?
Chairman, we're just about to go into a cycle of area committees where the fire service are reporting. Perhaps it could be included in each agenda. I mean, this deal tomorrow, and I think Wigton's tomorrow. Tuesday will be the following week.
I'm going to still, well, it'll be a wee bit short notice for that as well, won't it? No. I don't know what Jim put.
I suppose it's really entirely up to members. As I say, it's not a consultation. It's an engagement to allow you to see where the fire service is intending to go, and then for you to feed into that so that you can have some comment on the new strategic plan.
Derek?
Thanks, Chairman. I think the simplest point to confirm is that there will be full consultation on this plan through the fire service using appropriate methods, I understand, including consultation with area committees?
I'm sure that will happen, yes.
Okay, so if members are satisfied with that, we'll await the formal consultation and proceed on that basis. I think, to be fair, the arrangement was issued to members, but with the benefit of hindsight, we probably could have had that engagement before the committee at 2 o'clock rather than after. So lessons learned, and therefore the key point is there will be formal consultation with the council when the plan is ready, and we'll await that with anticipation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Derek. Jimmy, carry on my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Sorry to stop you in your tracks. Does that mean that the members who are actually able to take the brief window of opportunity to offer some pre-engagement thoughts or pre-consultation thoughts won't get that opportunity now, and it'll just go out to consultation?
No. Derek?
Can I ask through Jim, through you, Chair, if we go out of consultation, there'll be a chance of modifying it. You know, it's not a fait accompli. That's the whole point of consultation. So if we miss the opportunity, even doing it today, we're going to be thinking on our feet, you know, and giving Jim instant feedback, which isn't the best way to do, shaping a future plan for Dumfries and Galloway. I'm quite comfortable going to area committees because we'll put our input there. I won't think it changed a whole lot since last time. Well, it has.
Just for clarity of members, the strategic plan has not been written yet for 2016-19, and it'll be prepared to go to Parliament prior to April 2016. This whole idea it's purely a presentation to give you a flavour of some of the issues that are arising within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, where we think we should be going, but to give members and other stakeholders an opportunity to have that very early engagement to influence it before it gets written. That was the purpose of today.
Stephen, will you want to come back?
Well, I appreciate that members have different views, and it's a short time scale for offering any sort of early engagement from the members' point of view, especially those who unfortunately aren't able to stay on for the rest of the time. But any opportunity is an opportunity, and I just sort of felt I should put that out there because obviously there's a presentation prepared, and I just thought if there is an opportunity for members who are here to at least get a heads up, if you like, on what's likely to be coming forward, at least it'll give them a better context to understand the consultation when it does come out.
Well, it's an informal presentation and it's next door, so anybody that's able to go. Jim's quite happy whether there's one there or two there or three there or five there, isn't he? So it'll go ahead next door, Stephen. You might be the only one there, but I hope you enjoy it. Right, Jim, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. I think I might draw the line if there's nobody there, though. But no, happy to do that. In terms of the report, a bit of wishful thinking, Chair. I would like to think I'll be an area manager one day, but I'm not quite there yet. So I'm afraid it's Group Manager Walk reporting on this annual report. The report itself is a fairly good news story, apart from one or two areas. Of the 10 performance indicators that we're reporting on, 6 of them are an improving picture, 1 static, and 3 are a picture of less good performance. And I'll take those first if members don't mind. The fatal fire casualties is the one I'll start with, because we've had 3 fatal fires in the last, I think it was 7 months now, which is very unusual for the Dumfries and Galloway area. If I tell members, and it's in the report, that in actual fact we'd engaged in all the areas in where there was fatal fires, not necessarily with the occupier of the fire that occurred. And that's the theme of today that I'd like you to really concentrate on, because despite having the 3 fatal fires, the engagement that we have with communities and with partners is extraordinary given the resources that we have. For example, on the back of the fatal fires right across Scotland, it's a Scottish trend, unfortunately. The director, Mr. Ramsey, instigated a week of action last week, and we've engaged with a lot of partners, housing associations and others, and we've generated almost 200 home fire safety visits from that 1 week. So whilst the fatal fires is both sad and disappointing in terms of the data and our stats, we are working very, very hard to ensure that it doesn't continue. In terms of false alarms, militias are up, but as you can see by the data, the numbers are so low that I don't think we would concern ourselves greatly at this point with the number of malicious calls that we're receiving. And as you can see from the report, that we moved very, very quickly on one where we could identify the individual. And a lot of it is usually done through our fire sector intervention, whether it's starting fires or alarms. And the other one is equipment failure, and I think members are aware, I think we've raised this previously, that due to the change in mobilising to automatic alarms, the Dumfries and Galloway figures were always going to increase because there's a change to the call challenge system. Previously, our control staff would challenge the caller, and if we were confident that it was a responsible person making the call, telling us that there was no need for the fire service to attend, then we didn't. Now we attend every single one. But on the plus side, if you look at the other data, most of the trend is downward. Not just in the previous year's data, but if you look at the data right across the last 3 to 4 years, it's still showing a downward trend. And what I'd like members to take from that is a bit of confidence that although we're now the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, locally we're still working very hard and doing pretty much the same things to reduce the incidence of fire and other events. I'm not going to go into any detail on the data. I'll allow members the opportunity to ask me any questions they would like. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I open up for questions, Jim, I'd like to congratulate you on your recent achievement at the awards at Dumfries for the project that you're running there. Congratulations. Would you like to say a brief word about the thing? Because I think it's a popular project. Maybe the members don't know about it. And then I'll open the report up for questions.
You have to remind me which one you're... We've had one or two. We attended and received awards on behalf of Nissdale Community Awards. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. And that was in relation to, I'm just trying to remember it. Craig, can you remember? That's right. Yes, it was in terms of our Olive Branch project. The Olive Branch, it was actually brought from one of our staff who came up from Staffordshire, and it's aimed at providing training and information to partners who work in the care industry and look after people in their own home. And the presentation has been done to social work staff, voluntary sector, care workers and a few others. And at the Nissdale Community Awards, we received the award for that project. That project is now growing arms and legs. It's now being delivered to the University of West of Scotland mental health students as part of their training and as part of their qualification. And that's in collaboration with the University of West of Scotland for the whole of the West of Scotland.
Well done, Jim. Thanks. Questions on the report now? Who have we got clear? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Ronnie, I noticed you earlier.
No, it's just an observation, and it's more to do with Derek and Claire. I see Jim's got lovely coloured things. We've all got greys and blacks and you know. So I could read the narrative, you know. So, but usually we get sent a coloured additional paper with these sort of reports so that we can see at a glance the reds, yellows, and greens, whatever it is. Yeah, well, they used to get the fireworks, but they stopped that. But Jim's got a coloured copy.
Point noted, and what's obviously happened is when the requests come in with these papers coming from outside agencies, we've failed to pick up that there was a requirement for colour, so we'll rectify that in due course. Apologies.
Right, any other questions for Stephen?
Thank
Thank you. Just on page 43 or 46, just the road traffic collisions, and it's just talking about the average age of casualties, and obviously there's the kind of, is it young people or is it very old people, you know, where the target sort of education is needed. The average age is 51. I'm just wondering, is that the arithmetic average, or is it because you could have young and old and the average works out at 51, or is it like, you know, it's a sort of spread of ages across the sort of age range, as it were?
It is a spread, but what we do find is that the majority of accidents tend to be in the younger age group and the older age group, and we're carrying out activities the same as the police. We're working with them on the older driver scheme, and we're also still doing Safe Drive, Stay Alive and Hit and Run Theatre at the secondary schools prior to students just reaching the age of getting a licence. So we're working very hard in terms of that, and it's why the information is important about ages, because with the ageing population of Dumfries and Galloway, we recognise that I think that's going to become a longer term issue for us as well.
Any more questions?
Sorry, I can't be very critical, but no, this is a good report. And the stats on the page 32 are quite encouraging. And you've given it, because I was going to say there's a bit of an anomaly, but you gave it an explanation to that. Because if you look at 311, false alarm equipment, and these are things that are in decline, but in the stats are up. But you've given, because you respond now to all false alarms, so that's cleared that up. It's a very good report, Chair. Can I ask, sorry, but Dumfries and Galloway's mostly retained officers, and we don't capture that anymore. I just wondered, have we still got a good, healthy number of volunteers? Well, volunteers, you know what I mean? Across the piece, because Dumfries is only a full-time station still.
In terms of our staffing, yeah, we have the whole time station, and we still have the same number of retained stations. I think it would be fair to say, in line with a lot of areas, recruitment is an ongoing problem, and retention is an ongoing problem, and that's for a whole host of reasons: primary employment, having to travel further to get work, availability to attend. Members may or may not be aware, but there is a national review into the retained and volunteer service as we speak. In the first phase of that, we'll report very shortly, and there'll be a second phase looking at where do we take it. And part of the engagement that we were talking about for later on, it was that very thing. What's your views on the retained service? How do we make it sustainable for the long term?
Graham?
Yeah, just, are there any of these retained stations that are getting, the personnel numbers are getting down to critical levels?
I wouldn't say they're getting down to critical levels in terms of numbers. The problem is, as I explained, is employment and availability at certain times. So whilst we have the establishment is fine, in most areas, we have a problem at Drumore for the volunteer service. We're really struggling to recruit there. But part of the review also takes in our emergency cover review, because we're looking at remote rural areas as well. And again, this was part of the engagement, was to ask for views and thoughts on that. Because in remote rural areas, it's really difficult to get crews. And it's also very expensive in terms of supplying fire engines, etc., etc. And what we're looking at is something like, do we enhance our prevention activities in these areas? So, for example, one of the discussions has been on some of the remote islands. Do we go to the expense of fitting sprinklers in people's properties? And we don't need a fire service per se, because the sprinklers will protect life. So it's all that kind of thought process. There's nothing been ruled in, nothing been ruled out.
Any further questions? We've got them all, Jim? Just another thing, Jim, before you finish. I've got my wee photos of the policemen here, because also with the fire there's been a fair turnaround of staff and that, and a lot of members don't know who's at the top and who to contact. So I know you used to do it in the fireworks, Ronnie, didn't you? They had pictures and that in the fireworks. If you could maybe do something like that, Jim, for the community and the members, I think it'd be quite handy, especially with the changeover of officers.
I'm happy to do that if members are brave enough to receive our photographs.
Certainly has, and you can put your mobile number on it too, so it's easy to get a hoodie. Carry on, Graham.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. I think maybe Jim talked about Dromore. I think if you threaten to remove the service, there might be volunteers who'll come out the woodwork then. But the other thing was that you talked about your nice wee coloured pictures. Local Police Scotland, Local Policing Plan 2014 to 17. In the police bit, there's pictures of all the current, and they're not current because some of them have, a lot of them have, there's been a lot of changes. So it's out of date.
Right, we've got the recommendations. Recommend members are to ask to scrutinise the performance of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for Dumfries and Galloway from 1st April 2014 to 31st March 2015 as detailed in the appendix. Agreed? And I think we've scrutinised it well. Thank you, Jim. As I said, Jim's got his wee engagement session next door. Once I've made a couple of phone calls, I'll go in, and Stephen's gone, but I don't know. Did you say about 20 minutes, you think? Right. So, Andrew, are you want to say something, or you got to be an attendee next door? Members?
Would it be possible, I have to make apologies, I've got the grandkids coming. Would it be possible for your presentation to be sent out electronically? I mean, obviously we can't feed back today, but we could it'll give us an idea of what, for the area committee stuff and, going forward. Is that okay?
I'm forgetting it electronic because you're not going to get a lot of engagement for us anyway, doing it verbally, because there's only got to be about 2 left, I think. It's just, as Roy said, I had a wee bit earlier notice I could maybe, but we had social work committee this morning as well, which didn't help, because we had a lot of members on there. So it was a wee bit short notice to be able to organise something to tie in with the committee today.